All right, welcome to Online History with Mr. G. Today we're going to be asking the question, how did Napoleon impact the United States? There are a couple of reasons why I wanted to ask this question. And while I erase this guiding question, I want you to be thinking about things that you already know about Napoleon. What's the background information that we already have on him? So Napoleon is technically French. He's actually Corsican, which is close enough. He is a soldier. He is first consul at one point. And he is later emperor. Okay, so how do these things impact what happens in the United States roughly from 1799 to 1821 when he dies? Like, why does what happens over there matter for the United States? There are a couple of things, and I'm going to erase some of these as we go here. There are a couple of things. Napoleon was waging war all through Europe. So I don't draw at all. So if this is France, this is England, they are separated by this little space right here known as the English Channel, which is a body of water. Napoleon wanted to conquer England. That was his goal. He wanted to rule all of Europe. England was his biggest threat. He couldn't, though, he couldn't sail across the English Channel to get to England because England's navy was so dominant that it controlled the waters. So Napoleon couldn't do to England what he wanted to do. So what did he do instead? He basically took his war to the rest of Europe and Asia, with this being Russia. Okay, so again though, how does that impact the US, which is over here with a gigantic ocean separating them? Why does it matter? Well, the reason it matters is because Napoleon was constantly losing men and he was constantly needing money. Wars cost a tremendous amount of money. And so when Napoleon wants to come up here, can't, so starts going through here, starts taking on Prussia and Austria eventually and other places, he needs a lot of money and a lot of men. And he can get the men, he can get people here, but where are the dollars coming from? Well, as it turns out, he had a problem, and in 1801, Jefferson becomes president. Jefferson has a problem too. The United States was bordered on, or had it as its western border, the Mississippi River. Mississippi River. However, the U.S. didn't control access to it. This was not U.S. controlled over here. It was actually French controlled. It was known as the Louisiana Territory. And this was a ton of land. It was something like that. It was a lot of land. So Jefferson had ambassadors talk with the French ambassadors and say, what if we made a deal? What if we made a deal? What if we, the United States, buy this and we will send you what you need, money, in the form of $15 million. Napoleon said, if I keep this Louisiana Territory, it's going to end up costing me. It's going to cost me men and it's going to cost me money, both of which I need over here. Because in order to secure this from either the United States or Spain, who was over here, or England, remember that the French and the English had fought in the United States in what's known as the 7 Years' War, which was 1756 to 1763. So if the wars that are taking place over here, if they come over here, it's going to cost Napoleon, and he's trying to dominate Europe. Doesn't really care about this, can't afford to. So he sells what's known as the Louisiana Territory, and this is called the Louisiana Purchase, done under President Thomas Jefferson in 1803, and it doubles the size of the United States, and it does so for $15 million. So the U.S. gets a tremendous amount of territory and, potentially more importantly, secures the Mississippi River. This is really important because this is the Gulf of Mexico down here. This is all water. And so if you're up here and you want to be able to trade with somebody down here, you need this waterway to be secure. Or if you want your goods to come all the way down here and then to go over to Europe, you need to be able to get out there. And if it's controlled by somebody else, you can't guarantee that that's going to happen. And what happens if those goods become captured? Your prices go up, which means you have less customers, and you're more likely to go out of business. So securing the Mississippi River is vastly important. The Louisiana Purchase is the first big way that Napoleon impacts the United States. The second way is Napoleon is doing his thing in Europe, engaging in war with essentially everybody. While that's happening, the U.S. doubles in size. Cool. This is LP that we just looked at. We know this. We just looked at it. Great. The second thing that happens is what's known as the War of 1812. The War of 1812 was a naval conflict. Now remember, England's navy is basically second to none. Nobody's going to defeat England's navy in the early 19th century. The problem the English had was they were still engaging in conflict with the United States. There were forts in the U.S., mainly in the Northeast, like at Niagara and other places, that the British didn't want to give up. They didn't want to leave them because they were still making them money. And they said, you beat us in the Revolutionary War, but you're not strong enough to push us out of here. You just beat the army that we had there. You beat us, but you didn't have enough to beat us totally. So we're going to stay here because you're not very strong. So they're still here. And the U.S. says, hey, get out of here. You're doing this. You're staying in the ports. You're also doing this policy called impressment. And impressment means that you sail around on your boats and you find people who are sailing around on their boats from countries you don't like, and you capture them, and then you force them to work for you. And the U.S. was had this done to them time and again by the British. And in fact, Jefferson was extremely mad about it. I was looking for his name, but I'd erased it. He was extremely mad about it. And he said, you guys have to stop. And they basically said, make me. So the War of 1812 is a naval conflict between the U.S. and British. The reason why the U.S. is able to win and the reason why Napoleon matters is England couldn't really fight a two-front naval war at the same time. They had so many boats here. They had so many ships staying at home to protect against Napoleon, which was the much greater threat. Like if the U.S. wins and the British have to leave Fort Niagara, if they have to tell their sailors, hey, stop, capturing people, oh, well. They're willing to lose that fight. But if they lose this fight, if they take their ships from here and they say, no way we're going to lose these forts, well, now there's nobody protecting them against Napoleon. Now Napoleon comes over, boom, captures England, destroys England. Now he's got France and England in here, and now he's building a real empire, and there go the British. So the British couldn't afford to really allocate all their resources to the War of 1812. End result is the United States wins. So the U.S. wins against the English twice in 50 years, from the American Revolution and the War of 1812. And so the two ways that Napoleon impacts the U.S. is the Louisiana Purchase and the War of 1812. What happens after? By the time Napoleon dies, 1821, we're into the era of good feelings. This is Monroe presidency. And what this means is that Americans have beaten the strongest country in the world twice. Napoleon couldn't beat them, but we did twice. So Americans are feeling really good about who we are. We issued the Monroe Doctrine, which says, hey, European countries, you're going to stay out of the United States. You're not going to come here anymore. You can engage us in trade, but you're not going to come and take over ports like you had been. So now we're able to sort of stand up for ourselves and to get kind of tough. And we're able to do all these things not necessarily because of Napoleon, but we're able to do these things because there was a war taking place across the ocean that necessitated England allocating a lot of resources to it. And so what happened here in the United States was this young, fledgling country which had essentially no real army or navy to speak of, at least not one that could compete with Great Britain's, was able to develop the infrastructure needed to actually mobilize a campaign against the strongest country in the world. We did it twice, and we beat them twice. And so when asking how did Napoleon impact the United States, really what you should be thinking of is the Louisiana Purchase and the War of 1812. His conquest led to him needing to sell the Louisiana Territory. Jefferson wanted to buy it. Jefferson needed to secure the border. The Louisiana Purchase solved both their problems. The War of 1812, as Napoleon is engaging England in conflict, the United States says to England, we want you out of here. That leads to a war. Because England can't allocate a lot of resources, the United States is able to mobilize a massive naval victory against a country that was dominating everyone in terms of their navy over in Europe. So because of his distractions, the U.S. was able to double in size and gain independence from England for a second time. All right, if you like these videos, if you like this content, if you like being in the classroom with me, you can probably hear some of the background noise as I'm actually in a school here in the United States. If you like this, please go ahead and like it. Please subscribe, share. I'm going to be doing all kinds of videos. I tend to bounce around from one theme to the next, so you never really know what you're going to get. But hopefully you find them fun and engaging and you learn something, and thanks for watching.